Welcome to the Heart of Giving. As you know, we tell you about the nonprofits. Most of them have been for mainly Long Beach. Today we have one that's really special. We've been trying to get them together for a long time. Finally, they're here to talk about a program that's not just in Long Beach, but Long Beach, I think, had something to do with it. But it's a national program that has become something that we've all become so aware of, and that's something for our veterans. And we have the people from the U.S. Vets with us today. Stephen Peck, who is the national president, who is really from Long Beach, I think, but maybe not. And Mike Murray, and I think we all know Mike Murray. He's on a lot of boards, but he's with the Verizon company, and he is the chairman of the advisory council. Is that right,
That's
Mike?
right.
Okay. And you have members on the board and all that. So you have meetings and
Right.
good for you.
Yep.
Okay. But Stephen, I want to start with you. You know, I think it's probably more in the news than ever before, a recognition of what the veterans of our country need. And I know you've been part of it for many, many, many years, and you're probably
years, yes.
helping with the conversation to direct the country in directions to go. So tell us first about generally the U.S. Vets.
U.S. Vet started 21 years ago and started in response to what was then a much larger problem than it is today. There were, at that time, about 250,000 veterans on the streets of America. Big problem. And the VA was not handling this problem. VA does medical, psychological very well. They don't do housing. And so they were seeking nonprofit partners that
The very thing that people need.
Absolutely. Veterans were cycling in and out of treatment programs at the VA, and if they were homeless when they came in, they were still homeless when they came out. So a solution was really needed, and a nonprofit solution would be the most efficient thing. So we started in '91 in Inglewood, California, and started with
21 years ago?
21 years ago.
That you were involved with 21 years ago.
And I was involved with 21 years ago. I was working at the VA at the time, but I was assigned to this new nonprofit. Put some of the first 5 guys that were in the building there. We started with 5 people. We now house 3,000 people every night, so we've grown a little. We got our experience there in Inglewood, and then the second program we started was here in Long Beach. And we knew that not only did you need to provide the housing, but they needed employment assistance. They had to get back to work if they were going to become self-sufficient, and they need counseling, whether that would be substance abuse, mental health counseling, and they need all those 3 things together. Otherwise,
and this was in Inglewood and Long Beach, but was it any place else?
We very soon after that, in the early 2000s, between 2000 and 2005, we started in Houston, Hawaii, Las Vegas, Phoenix, Washington, D.C., Riverside.
With the same objectives?
Same objectives. Once we got these 2 programs going in Los Angeles and Long Beach, other communities came to us and said, wow, you guys really know how to do this. Both the housing and the services. And so we were approached by all the other communities that we're in today.
And it's grown.
It has grown a lot, yes. And it has changed over time. So over time, our initial program was just to provide housing and employment services for veterans and some counseling. And mostly we were serving Vietnam veterans. These days, of course, there's been a couple of wars since then. We're involved in a war now, and about 10% of our veterans coming in are from this current conflict, Iraq and Afghanistan. And their needs are a little different. All of them have post-traumatic stress who come to us. They've had problems at home. They can't hold a job. They have anger issues. So all of those things really impact their ability to live with family or live with a significant other or with a wife. So we they have to go through a course of counseling when they come to us. And many of them these days are going back to college. So it's a different population with a different solution.
Well, I know you started the things in Inglewood, but I got to know you when you came to the city of Long Beach.
Yes.
And we just happened to have the land They're right
yeah,
by the
yeah,
freeway,
yeah,
right off of Pacific Coast Highway.
PCH and
PTH,
San
yeah.
Santa Fe, yeah.
And all of a sudden, this was something entirely new to the city and also to you. But
Yes.
tell us about that. Is that when you and Mike got to know each other?
We got to know each other very soon around that time. I think we met
Well,
each other before we
I bet
actually
you.
opened, I think.
I bet you
Maybe.
both found out you were Marines.
We both found out we were Marines,
And
we were
instant friends.
We were in absolutely, and we were in Vietnam in sort of the same area, and our tours actually overlapped. Mike was there before I was. He cleared the decks so that I could come in safely.
Okay, let's talk about the Long Beach program then that you started.
So to have it's part of the Cabrillo Savannah, the old Cabrillo Savannah Naval Housing Site.
That's a naval housing that was vacated when the Navy left.
Correct.
Okay.
And the Homeless Coalition, before we got involved, the Homeless Coalition in Long Beach raised its hand and said, we need some of this land for homeless veterans, which at that time in the base closure process, if there was a need and if there was a group capable of providing the service, then some of that DOD land had to be given to serve homeless veterans. We were called. They knew about our program in Inglewood, and they said, "Can you do something down here?" So we were part of
because the land was there.
The land was there, so we were part we were the group that designed the 26 acres that is now the Villages at Cabrillo, and working with really you and Jerry Miller and a couple of other folks really guided us through that process. Initially, I think some of the residents of Long Beach were not thrilled that we were going to bring 500 homeless veterans down.
That's right.
So we did a real community outreach process, but you all in the City Council hung in there with us. And ultimately, we opened in August of 2000 and brought our first 20 or 30 veterans in. And in addition to serving veterans, it also serves families. So we worked with the city, the health department, to bring in other nonprofits.
But it wasn't
families.
as large as it is now. I mean, physically large.
Correct. We started with about 300. We built up to about 300 veterans and about another 150 in the family programs. So it was about 450 total. Now there are about 1,000 people there.
Is that right?
About 550 are veterans, and the remainder are families, non-veteran families and children. And there's another 145 unit building being built now, and there's another 125 unit building on the books.
Is that right? That land is, there still was land to be developed? Is that right?
The original plan called for about a population of about 1,000. And that's what the original conditional use permit had said. And we've gone beyond that. So we've gone back to the city. They've seen how well it's run, how many people that were serving there, and so gave us the permission to add a few hundred more beds.
Well, you know, you said that when the veterans hospitals were the only really real resource that they had, and when they came out, they were still homeless. You have provided the homeless first. However, you had so many other services that have volunteered to be there to help these veterans when you first opened, that it was almost like a new thing that they're all working together.
Yeah. The Village at Cabrillo concept was unique in the country in that time, and in many ways is still unique. The size of it, first of all, how often do you get 26 acres near a city center, and the variety of services that we were able to put there. So there's a dining hall there for those who need their meals. There's a career center there, which is like an employment office, 25 computer stations, phones, faxes. There's programs serving individual veterans. There's a female veterans program, the largest female veteran program in the country, cooperating with the VA to provide sexual trauma treatment services. The first women's program we opened, we weren't able to fill the beds. We'd heard that there were female veterans out there, but couldn't fill the beds, didn't know why. Found out so many of them. Actually, about 70% of them who came to us had suffered some sort of military sexual trauma. And there wasn't an effective treatment program for them. So,
and they didn't almost want to admit it.
Absolutely. One, they didn't want to admit it, and two, the VA programs largely are male. It's largely a male bastion. 90% or so of all VA patients are male. So if a female had experienced sexual trauma, obviously she didn't want to walk into a situation where we should be surrounded by men. And the beauty of Villages at Cabrillo is that it spread out so we could put that program in its own individual housing. And so it's an all-women's building. So it gave them that feeling of
the
safety.
special services for them.
And the trauma services that we provide with the VA, the female veterans we see are a very challenged group. Many of them have been in combat, so they've experienced combat along with the guys over there. And if you add on top of that the sexual trauma they've experienced, if they come back, many of them come back. There's a lot of divorces in that population. And the mother, by and large, are left with the kids. So it becomes a very complex situation, and we're able to provide services for all those issues in one spot.
And there are services for the men, and as you say, helping them find a job, maybe giving them some skills. Also, there was one other thing that I was so impressed with that was going on. I can't remember it right now. The more you talk, I'll find out which one it was. But you're finding new things that they're facing now. Different population.
We made some discoveries when we started the women's program, and the particular experiences they have had. We're finding similar differences with the young veterans, with the veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan. They were coming into our jobs program, and which we had been running at that point already for 15 years, and thought, well, we've got this figured out. We put them through this series of this process, and they'll come out the other end with a job. Well, they weren't staying with us 2 or 3 weeks. We found out that really their primary need was their post-traumatic stress. These veterans, young veterans, were homeless because they experienced terrible things in combat and had trouble processing that information. So we knew we needed to design a new program that would give them an opportunity to address that issue first. Many of them didn't want to. There's a stigma associated with it. It's hard to revisit that. When they've been in combat, they don't want to think about it. But we require them to go through successions
and
of
they're
counseling.
with people that talk the same language.
Yes, and they wanted to be with their cohorts. They didn't want to be with the old guys. So, but we found out, interestingly, that when they started a RAP group there, a peer counseling group, there was a Vietnam combat vet who wanted to help, and he made a real bond with some of those young guys. So we had the intergenerational counseling going on. It was very effective. It helped him. Helped him with his trauma issues, and it helped them because they saw someone who'd come out the other end.
And when you're with people that had the same problems, when somebody emerges, they think, God, I could do that too. I mean, they've gone through it and they've been able to do this, this, and this. And
that's really one of the main values of these large programs. A lot of veterans in there going through the same journey together. Right? It's once you've become homeless, and if there is substance abuse involved or mental health issues, it's very hard to dig yourself out of that. You've gone pretty far down, and it's taken a period of years, and all of you've lost a number of support systems along the way. So digging them out of that is challenging, and they help each other. They encourage each other.
That's good.
They're walking that road
That's
together,
good.
and it's really powerful.
The other service that I knew that you provided is that some of them have legal problems.
Yes.
And you've helped them see their way out, because once you your name is on something that shouldn't be.
Yeah.
How do I get out of this?
Yeah,
You know,
so
what can I
there's
do?
Couple of nonprofits that come there. Some of them dealing, talking with the female veterans with children, and you know, some of those female veterans have lost their kids to the system, or there was someone else. So they need to get themselves stabilized first before they can reunite with their children, and the lawyers are helping them with that process.
Well, you know, we're talking as though there's nobody else in the room, and here's Mike, and I know he's just waiting to say
I'm learning a lot.
all kinds of things. How did you get involved, Mike?
Well, I hadn't done anything with veterans since I got out of the service. And Steve and I were in a meeting downtown, and we met and we had that discussion, found out, you know, had some similar experiences. And I was with Marine again, and that's different. Especially a Marine who has had, you know, combat experience.
And the same combat.
Yeah, the same area. You know, he invited me to be on the board, and I joined the board. And for a number of meetings, the board meetings were just me and Steve in his office. And I said, Steve, I think we need to expand.
I mean, it's called a board. Is
Right.
that me?
Yeah, or council, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
advisory council. So I said, Steve, you need, this was my mistake. I said, Steve, you need a chairman. And he said, okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And him
Okay.
being an officer and me
That's
being
right.
enlisted,
That's right.
you know, I got the order. And we've been growing it ever since. We have a 17-member board right now.
And now are these local people or
They
all
are.
over?
They're all local from Long Beach.
Huh.
We have business people. Kathy McDonald, Jim McDonald's wife, is on the board. Actually, she started a program of her own for women where they were making blankets and making skirts, and she did this all on her own. We didn't even know about it for a while. And then one meeting, we said, how are you doing financially? And you know, she said, well, I could use a little help. So we all threw, you know, money out on the table so she could continue the program. So there's some real personal, we have an attorney, Jerry Fisher, who you may know, who has pro bono taken on a veteran who's in really bad physical shape, and has, you know, gotten him through the Social Security service. So there's so many things, doors that have opened up with my, you know, being involved with this, and it's the longest deployment I've ever had.
Really?
Steve will not let me out. I've been
No
at this
way,
for about
man.
10 years.
Well, you know, I know because you have been involved with many organizations, but I know that this is really dear to your heart.
Yes.
Because you feel it.
Yes.
And so I'm not surprised that you've been doing this for, what, 10 years, 12 years?
10 years, yeah, and you know, we started a luncheon in Long Beach that I think has been modeled in some other
Yep.
other sites as well.
Yep.
And we've had some incredible speakers, including
they-
from here, Long Beach.
Well,
Virginia.
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of emotion there
Yeah,
in those meetings because they all kind of talk the same language.
that's right.
Yeah.
And they can feel the experiences felt by the others that are sharing in the room.
We had a gunnery sergeant from Marine, Damaso Sudas from Huntington Beach, was on Iwo Jima. He's 88. He's a auxiliarist now in the Coast Guard. He was our honoree and keynote speaker one year. He told me, this is the only one of these I've ever been to that I liked, because all we do is just focus on veterans and families. We have you seen, we've had toasts throughout where people toast a loved one or anything they want to, really. And that becomes an entire part of the program. And, you know, it's very emotional with people.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I mean, when all of a sudden you feel you're alone, and then all of a sudden you're in a group
Yeah.
where you feel like you belong. God, that's a
Exactly.
great feeling.
Yeah,
Exactly.
That's
yeah,
a
very-
great feeling.
Very powerful, and there's such support for veterans in Long Beach. So everyone really feels it, and they feel it's like a, you know, it's almost like this support group for veterans and their families in this room. It's wonderful when that happens.
When I was more active in doing things in the city, the Veterans Day was always a big day where there were ceremonies and, you know, and the people that go to that, you know, how many of you were in the Navy and the Army, and there's a chance for them to show, and
Yeah,
there's just great
yeah.
pride.
Yeah.
And I think that the more we can feel thankful, the more pride it gives, you know, people that have never been involved.
Yeah.
But to see that emotion and to see that feeling of acceptance is
Yeah, yeah,
really
it's very,
palpable
it's
in
very
these.
special, and that Long Beach lunch still is unique in that, in the emotion that's generated at that
Yeah.
event, and it's so good for that. We always have a number of veterans in the room
Oh,
on
yeah.
that day, and it is so beneficial for them to see the support and love from the community. It really makes them feel that their service
How
has
could you
been
do it
appreciated.
again? How could you do that? How could you have a veterans lunch where they all pay their own way, you know, and just have a sharing? It seems as though you'd
Yeah.
have hundreds.
It evolved, and it invariably takes a life of its own.
Yeah.
You know, and
Well,
we're
that's what I
just
mean.
part of it.
But
yeah.
you know, just hearing this, there may be veterans saying, you know, I'd like to be around some veterans someday, so we can just chat. Just having veteran chat days.
Right, right.
You know, in the
Yeah.
community. You know, and it costs you $10 to eat lunch, and we're all here together.
Right, right.
So, okay, Mike, that's a new
One
project.
of one of our board members, I don't think you know this, had a friend who was about to become homeless, was living in his car as a veteran. He asked me, you know, can we get some help from U.S. Vets? And the same day that I called, he was over in U.S. Vets, and now he's housed and doing much better. You know,
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah, that was
That's
great.
very cool. That's very cool.
Okay, now you are the national president
Yes.
of this U.S. Vest.
Yes.
And did you go from Long Beach to that?
I actually held two titles. While I was the director of our Long Beach program, I was also the community development director of the national organization. We were small then. I mean, I was employee number 6. We now have 400 employees, so we've grown a little. But I always held that other title, so at some point I handed the directorship of Long Beach to someone else. I became senior community development director of our national office, and then assumed the presidency in 2010.
So you are housed where?
Our office is in Los Angeles. It's in downtown.
The
Los
national
Angeles.
office.
The national office, yeah.
I
So
see.
I visit many of the sites every year. But I'm down at Long Beach, you know, every 3 or 4 weeks I'm down in Long Beach.
That's great.
It still holds a special place for me.
That's great. Well, this is this growing? Is this program, U.S. Vets, growing?
We are still growing amazingly enough. We're about to open an 85-bed program in Washington, D.C. We have a program, a 100-bed program in Riverside, where we have plans to expand that to 200 beds. Hopefully we'll break ground this year on that. There's a program needed in Ventura. We get calls, really, every couple of weeks we get calls.
But in parts of the other United States where they don't even have one.
Right, the latest call was from Wichita.
Ah.
So, but you know, we've had calls from literally from New Hampshire and Nebraska and Idaho. San Antonio wants to do something.
Well, surely they have veterans in all of these places.
They do, and
There's no organization that wants to further.
It's people don't know how hard it is. They think, well, it's veterans, and I bet you just get a lot of support. It's very hard to put all the pieces together. You know, the housing and the services and the staff. You know, you know, finding really good, dedicated,
People.
knowledgeable staff is always a challenge. It's hard work. So we're being very cautious about how we expand.
Well, it seems like more and more the things that they're finding out show this great need.
Yes.
And it seems
Yes.
as though that every place should have something for veterans, whether it's just a small group that grows as yours did, or something where they're emphasizing vets.
Yes, yes, and you know, 4 years ago, the Secretary of the VA said that he wanted to end veteran homelessness by the end of 2015, 12 months from now.
Oh, wow.
So we've done a lot. Since we've been in existence, we've reduced the homeless population in our communities by 75%.
Wow.
So we're doing pretty good.
In your communities.
In our communities, and in the country nationwide. We're in most of the large communities. Long Beach, I believe, is down to about 200, maybe even a little less than that. So Long Beach expects to reach that goal
Wow.
by the end of this year, and we'll
That's
be helping
wonderful.
by building more housing for veterans. And then the idea is to keep them off the street. Veterans who are experiencing problems, unemployment or mental health issues or substance abuse issues. So the idea would be then to build a veterans service clinic where before they became homeless, they could come there, access the services that they need. If they need housing, fine, but maybe we can catch them early, provide those services that allow them to become self-sufficient even before they become homeless, and that would be the ideal.
Well, but also with the conflicts that we have now and what the veterans are feeling when they leave, which is different in some ways, as you mentioned, than the older veterans. There should be some new programs also that recognize this, not just vets. Well, you are taking care of special programs, I know. Taking care of them through special programs.
Yeah, so we're trying to tailor our programs to meet those individual needs. Every veteran has a different story. I mean, the numbers of stories I've heard is.
How can members of our community help you more, Mike?
Well, personally,
Mike,
for me, they could come to the luncheon, which is in November, the first week in November, right around Veterans Day, and support the luncheon. Contribute to the luncheon. They can make contributions online on the US Vets website and just sort of get involved. The one thing that I know you understand that impresses me about US Vets, if it's a recovery situation, you've got to be in for the long haul. There's going to be some ups and downs. And that's what US Vets is about. These guys come in and they're with US Vets. And if it's an individual, it's the same. You've got to be in for the long haul. That's what impresses me about this program.
But if there's somebody out there now saying, who is a vet and has heard this conversation and said, I need some of this talking, not necessarily a bed, but maybe a bed too. Right. How do they get in touch with you?
Best way is through our website, usvetsinc.org. And there's a query sheet on there where what community are you in, what are your needs, and someone will call them depending upon where they are. So we have numerous therapeutic groups going on all the time. Outsiders are welcome. Other veterans are welcome.
They're not staying there.
They're not staying there.
But they can join in with your discussions.
Coming
that's
from the
good to know.
outside. So there's post-traumatic stress groups. There's family groups.
And where are you in the telephone book, or make sure the telephone number is shown on television or something?
Yes, yeah, we are on the phone book. I mean, they can call our main office and get directed to the nearest program if they're in Long Beach.
Because a lot of people watch this program that perhaps have a son or a husband or maybe even a wife that are vets that they've been worried about, and they would need something like this. Just someone to talk to. That's wonderful.
Yes.
Well, I thank you both for being here. That's wonderful. And, I do have to kind of end with saying that your father said that you were the hero in the family. And when Gregory Peck says that, we all agree with that, even if we didn't know it was your dad. Right. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Mike, too.
Yep.
Thank you very much for being with us. Wasn't that interesting? And I hope you become involved in some way. We'll see you next time.